Well, hey everybody, welcome back.
Hey everyone.
So, with our topic today, and if you don't know what it is, you may or may not have clicked on the picture or whatnot, but we are covering Bigfoot and Sasquatch. Mainly, probably more Sasquatch, Bigfoot. I mean, they're so interchangeable. I mean,
No, they're the same
they're
thing.
the same thing. We'll call it Sasquatch, and there's a reason why we're going to call it Sasquatch. But one of the main reasons we really haven't covered it that well up to this point is we're not very knowledgeable of it.
No.
We know is definitely a big part of the paranormal, and I know we've been reached out to before that we need to do this, and we've been wanting to, but we figured we would do the wise thing and not be the subject matter expert on
Yes.
it and bring on the subject matter expert. And today we have Sasquatch theory. Now, Sasquatch theory, the host Miguel, he is, first of all, he's awesome. He's a good dude. We know him. There's a history there, so we had him on, or we're gonna have him on, and we're excited about that. So, what can you tell us about Miguel?
Well, Miguel, his YouTube channel is Sasquatch Theory. Okay, you should go check it out. He goes out to these properties in Missouri, and most of the time it's the property owners are with them, and they talk about their experiences and what they've seen. I mean, he goes out by himself and he shows you things, talks about his own paranormal experiences. It's really interesting to watch.
Yeah, it is.
So I definitely, after you watch this episode, go check out his channel because it's really cool to see because they go in depth about stuff.
Very in depth. It's great. But listen, we can talk ad nauseum about him, but let's go ahead and just bring him on.
Let's talk to Miguel.
All right. Well, hey Miguel, how you doing?
I'm doing excellent. How are you guys doing?
Doing good.
We're doing really good. We just talked before we got started. We got a storm rolling in, so if anybody hears thunder or anything like that, it's not me doing awesome effects or anything. No, that's actually happening. But hey, listen, we're excited to have you. We're fans of yours for sure. And honestly, we really have not done much in the way of Bigfoot or Sasquatch on our show for a couple of reasons. One, it's always so many different variations, and we're never sure exactly which avenue we wanted to go. So maybe that'll help talking to you a little bit. But you're kind of our first guest that really, we did have somebody talking about like the giants and stuff like that, but nothing I can think of.
No, we haven't.
Bigfoot or Sasquatch related. So you're kind of edging new ground for us.
Okay. So, yeah, very good. And I have a few cryptid encounters and paranormal experiences, so I think it'll fit with the channel.
That's perfect.
Great.
Well, on that, we obviously know who you are, but for some of the audience who doesn't, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your paranormal experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Miguel, and I live in Center, Missouri, and I've been having paranormal cryptid experiences for basically my whole life. And my first experience was whenever I was about, 10 to 12 years old. I was sitting in my bedroom watching TV. I was on the computer, and it was pretty late at night. I think it was anywhere from like 9 to 10:30, 11 at nighttime. I was watching Cartoon Network, and I think Family Guy was on, and I was just sitting there chatting on my computer. I think we used like AOL or MySpace. I can't remember what it was. But I had the window cracked. It was about summertime, and it was pretty hot in the house. That's why I had the window cracked. But I heard what sounded like a werewolf. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind what it sounded like. It was deep, guttural, and it lasted about, I'd say about 7 seconds or so. And it's very comparable to the werewolf howl you hear like on old Hollywood films. It was like that, but with a lot of bass in it and extremely loud. And it really shocked me whenever I heard that. And as soon as the vocalization tapered off, I heard like this scream, like a woman screaming. So there's two different vocalizations that happened simultaneously. But
wow.
Immediately I went up to the window and slammed it shut. And my brain was trying to figure out what the heck just happened. I thought it was my brother out there like playing a prank on me, or possibly like somebody set up a PA system out in the woods because it was that loud.
Wow.
Wow. That's
Okay.
crazy. And, we live in Missouri as well,
Right.
for the listeners, and we don't have wolves. We've got coyotes, which we hear all the time. So that needs to be said.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not something you typically hear. I mean,
No.
you can make some comments about the possibility of the Ozark Howler, but it's not something you're going to just run across out there. So
No. That's very rare.
yeah. I mean, obviously that had to have a pretty profound impact on you. Is that kind of what got you started with, you can go through the genesis of how Sasquatch theory started, but I mean, obviously that had to have a pretty big impact on you.
At the time it did, and then I just kind of brushed it off and put it in the back of my mind because I could never figure out what it was. I mean,
Right.
I just kept thinking like it was a monster, somebody playing a prank on me,
Sure.
something unknown out there in the woods, and I had no idea about cryptids at the time. But I'll move on to my next encounter. Well, I guess that was an experience, but I'll move on to my first encounter that I ever had, and I actually have a lot of them, so it really makes my testimony seem unbelievable. But everything that I talk about truly happened. So it was about, I don't know, I think I was like a sophomore or a junior in high school. Me and my buddy Bruce got out of school. We hung out at his place for a while, and we decided to go on a road trip down to the Merrimack River. And we were driving on Old 66, and we got on Highway KK going towards the Merrimack. And at this point of the day, it was starting to get pretty dark. And as we're traveling down that highway, the state highway, we're getting to the top of the hill, and it's a big hill. And as we're going down the hill, my buddy Bruce sees a possum, and he decides to step on the gas. And all of a sudden, we're going like 70, 80 miles an hour down a state highway. And I guess his intentions are that he's going to hit that possum. And I'm just thinking like, oh man, what is this guy doing? So
Right.
by this point, it's dark outside. He's got his headlights on. And as we're getting close to the possum, this creature leaps out of the woods. And I mean, it's like a full on dive. It basically dives out of the woods, and it's ginormous. And basically, it comes out of the woods into the highway, snatches up the possum with its mouth, throws it up in the air, and shakes it around like a rag doll, and then tears back off from the woods. And basically, this creature, it looked like a giant wolf or a hyena. That's what the face looked like. But the head was kind of like a pit bull, and it had two pointy ears. The color of it was like a lightish gray color, kind of like a blue pit bull.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
around its neck, it had like this mange, or I don't know, like a hair. Kind of reminded me of like a tutu or something. But its chest was very broad, like it had a huge chest, and it was very, very robust. And like the back legs kind of tapered off and were a little bit smaller, but it was no creature that I'd ever seen in my life. And definitely not a breed of domesticated dogs that we have in the United States. But we both didn't know what it was. As the creature jumped out, grabbed the possum, shook it around, and then tore back off in the woods, we passed by in the car. And my buddy
Wow.
Bruce kind of stepped on the brakes, and he's like, "Whoa, did you see that?" I was like, "Yeah, what was that?" He's like, "I don't know." So we really didn't know what it was. And in my mind, I was kind of thinking it was a wild dog or just some unknown creature. I never really knew about cryptids at that time. I think I knew about Bigfoot, but I didn't know that there were other things out there in the woods.
Right.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's amazing. You know,
Yeah. And that's the thing is you're not the only one that saw it though. So that's a corroboration.
right. And for our watchers and our listeners, if you've never been in this area, and we're very familiar where Miguel, he's
Yes.
talking about.
There's been several things seen
Yeah,
in that area.
there's definitely a lot of stuff
Uh-huh.
that will be different than what you're normally used to running into in the woods. But especially at that time of night, that stretch of highway, it's pretty dark. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it is.
it's not like it's not like there could be any shadow play or anything like that. I mean, it is about as dark as you're gonna get, and to run into something like that, I mean, we're all pretty used to, especially living out here in the woods, that there are certain things you see, that you're like, well, that's probably just, whatever animal you may think you're putting in your head, but something with a mane like that jumping out.
Yeah.
And
well, and the color too.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've heard it being like that color. Usually it's like a dark black or brown.
Yeah, brown or something.
Recently, I heard that those things are called hellhounds, and I never really knew about it till people started talking about it.
Right, yeah. Or like we've heard dog man.
Yeah,
like,
the
that's
dog
talked
man.
about a lot too, but yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and it's funny, there's always a lot of talk about how, there's so much development and everything in the United States. And granted, in the big cities, there is. But a lot of people don't realize that when you get into the woods, especially in Missouri where we're at, there is so much out there that is probably, maybe not necessarily undiscovered, but can probably live somewhat nomadic and alone. So, it wouldn't surprise me at all that, if you run into these things, a place like Missouri would be a place. Because
Absolutely.
I mean, you get deep into like the forest out here, I mean, you're going to be lost for a long time.
Well, the Mark Twain National Forest is like covers the state, so
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's pretty impressive.
There's a lot of private land out there, a lot of forest, and I think people that live in like the suburbs or in the cities, like they don't really think about that because they don't hear about it. They've never been there, so it doesn't exist in their mind. But until you get out there, you'll understand.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's probably really, and I'll be honest with you, I was kind of one of them. I'm originally from, the suburban lifestyle and everything. And then I met this one, we got married and we moved to her neck of the woods, no pun intended. And, so I find myself in Missouri, and I'll be honest with you, it is a very difficult concept to wrap your mind around unless you're in it. So, I mean, it makes perfect sense.
And he was excited the first time he saw wild turtle, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, you don't run into turtles in the middle of Arizona. Well, yeah, you probably wouldn't, not in Tucson, Arizona, and certainly not in San Diego.
Yeah.
But with that in mind, kind of what led you to creating Sasquatch theory?
Later on after this encounter, I started to have Bigfoot experiences and encounters, and I'll get into those if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I think I was probably around, I don't know, I would say like 24, 25 years old. Me and the ex-girlfriend now, we went camping at the Merrimack River, and this is actually right past where I seen that hellhound or whatever you want to call it, a dog man, right off KK, off Riverside Road in the town I live in. But we camped there that day. It was during the summer. I think it was probably like June or July. And the whole day we were out there swimming in the river, and there was all kinds of floaters going by, people in kayaks and canoes, and just a lot of loud music, people partying, drinking, the typical summers at the river. But
Yeah, nothing unusual there.
yeah, absolutely. So later on in the day, we were talking about finding Bigfoot because we had been watching the TV show after work and just in that time frame. But I asked the ex, "Do you really think Bigfoot exists in Missouri?" And she said, "Yeah, I had an uncle that followed tracks in the snow. He ended up catching up to the creature and he shot at it. And whenever he shot at it, it turned around and screamed at him." So I was like, "Yeah, that's a possibility." I mean, I believe that. I kind of think that they're more in the Pacific Northwest, Canada, Alaska, but maybe they're around here. And we started to do some wood knocks on some trees off the riverbank. I went to my Mercury Mountaineer, pulled out this Nike baseball bat that I used in high school, and I was doing loud wood knocks on the trees. And her son started to join in. He was doing wood knocks, and then I did a loud whoop, and he was doing these little kid whoops, and we were just out there having a good time. And after we got done doing that, this huge tree on the other side of the river on some farmland just came crashing down. You could hear snapping, cracking, and whenever the tree hit the ground, you could hear the boom. So it really sounded like a fresh green tree rather than just some rotten tree that fell. And we kind of looked across the river and we thought, man, that's unusual. What the heck's going on? we didn't think Bigfoot. We were just like, that's weird that whenever we did the wood knocks and the whoops that happened, we shook it off, didn't really think too much of it. And later on that evening, that night, all the floaters cleared off the river. It got really quiet. You could hear the frogs, the bugs, and we were sitting there around the fire, and we were talking about that tree crashing down and how weird it was. And basically by this point it's dark, and she said that she's going to put her son to bed. I think it was around 9:30 p.m. And as we're sitting there around the fire on our side of the river in the woods, we hear this loud scream. And I mean, it sounds like a metal screamer. Like if you ever heard the band like As I Lay Dying or All That Remains,
Yeah.
like it sounded like a scream like that. Just and
Yikes.
it was extremely loud, and it sounded like it was about, I don't know, I'd say like 8 or 9 feet off the ground, because behind us it's pretty flat until you get up into the bluffs. But it sounded like it was only about, I don't know, maybe like 50 yards behind us or so, give or take. And whenever we heard that, she looked at me and she said, "Grab your gun, grab your gun." I'm like, "Why? You really think we need it?" She's like, "Grab your gun." And I had a Glock 19 that I brought camping with me. And I didn't grab the gun because I felt like if I did, something bad would happen. I don't know
Right.
Right.
why, what gave me that idea, but I just had that intuition that if I grabbed the gun, things would get serious. So
Mm-hmm.
whenever I heard that scream, I kind of had this little smirk on my face, because in that moment I realized that Sasquatch exists in Missouri. But I mean, I never saw it, but
Mm-hmm.
in that moment I felt like there's nothing else this could be other than a Bigfoot. And the only thing that I could come up with is maybe a mountain lion climbed up into a tree behind us and screamed at us about 9 feet off the ground. And that's kind of what I was telling myself. And we went to bed that night in the tent, and nothing else happened. I mean, I didn't hear anything. I was asleep, but it seemed like it was a pretty quiet night. And that next morning, we just kind of brushed it off because, I didn't see the creature. So it's not like I was like, oh, that was Bigfoot 100%. I just thought,
Right.
that was weird. And it was just another thing that I put in the back of my mind because I wasn't sure what it really was.
Mm-hmm. We're good about talking ourselves out of things
Yeah.
when you
Hmm.
experience things. Very good at that. And I got to say, you're pretty brave for going to sleep in the tent after hearing that. I don't know that I could have done that.
You gotta
Yeah.
sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, but not outside. I think I would have gotten in the
I mean,
car or something.
it makes sense too to leave the Glock because you're right. I mean, you never know because it could be a sign of aggression. So you
Mm-hmm.
always want to think about that. Like, do I really want to escalate it if it becomes an issue? You know,
Mm.
I would imagine a Glock 19 or a Glock in any range would not fare well against a Bigfoot.
Well,
I just
no.
got to think, but or that, or I'd just be too scared to shoot at it because I'd have to rationalize what I was looking at.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that kind of what made you just start Sasquatch theory? Is just say, okay, I'm having these, this is what I think and this is what I believe, and
Like the search for it.
right.
Oh, no. At this point, it's still early in my cryptid experiences and encounters, and I still don't know what it is. So it's not until way later till I start Sasquatch theory, after I actually have eye sighting encounters. And basically, after this incident, um, I went back to normal life, went back to work, and I lived about, I don't know, 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes away from where I seen that hellhound, where I had the tree pushed down, where I got screamed at. And it's pretty much across Jim's place. You guys know Jim, right there
Yes.
on 66. And
Mm-hmm.
basically I was having paranormal experiences there. I'd hear like disembodied voices, things would move around, things would tap on the window, click, 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 click. It sounded like nails tapping on the window. I'd hear babies crying, like little infants that were gasping for air, crying to be soothed by their mother. And I could never figure
Wow.
out what it was. There was a lot of stuff that happened in that house, and it just really terrified me. I guess that's the only way to put
Mm-hmm.
it. But basically, one day after work, I went to take the trash out, and I was on the back deck, And I did that same whoop that I did at the Merrimack River, just a loud whoop. And the reason I did that was because it worked down at the Merrimack River, and I kept doing that whenever I was out in the woods just to see if that would happen again, if I could get a reaction from whatever it was. And by this point, it's getting dark. I think it's the summertime, and I could hear something crashing through the woods. It's zigzagging through the woods. And this is like a strip of woods in between I-44 and Highway 66. So there's not really that much woods around there. I mean, there's deer and turkey that get back in there, and you just wouldn't think that a creature like this would be back there. But basically, I'm hearing it zigzag through the woods, crashing limbs, breaking like saplings, and I slide the glass door open and I tell my ex, hey, something's going on. Get out here. Check it out. So she comes out there. She's standing back with me, and you can still hear this thing zigzagging through the woods, making its way towards us. And by this point, it's almost completely dark, and whatever it is, it just stops at the edge of the wood line, and everything gets quiet. But you can't hear or you can't see what it was. And basically, it sounded like somebody put like a Ford Ranger Nest 10 pickup in neutral and just let it roll down through the woods.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But yeah, that's all that happened there.
And you're right, that stretch, it's not heavily wooded, but
there are trees, but
yeah.
you've got those major roads on each side of it. So that, yeah.
Well, it's certainly not timid, obviously, from road traffic. I mean,
no,
it just
not
said,
from I-44.
Not from I-44.
The very least, yeah.
Wow.
So
it's interesting.
I'll go ahead.
I was just going to say, I find it interesting because, and this is actually something I wanted to bring up, but, there are some theories with Sasquatch and Bigfoot, and I'd be interested in hear your take on it, but there's some people that say, well, they're interdimensional beings that, can, I guess, transverse dimensions. Mm-hmm. I find that interesting because you also hear the same thing when it comes to certain other paranormal activity, including, aliens and even honestly ghosts for that matter, and demons and stuff like that.
Yeah, they talk about all of it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Do you think that, or what is your thoughts and what do you believe? Like, do you think that number one, that is a possibility with Bigfoot? And do you think that maybe that area is either potentially, I guess we could use the word portal or something like that for this kind of interdimensional travel?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn 50-50. I do believe that these are an unknown species that's living out in the woods that is able to remain undetected from humans and their flesh and blood. But another part of me believes that it could be demonic or interdimensional, as other people say. But I'm going to go with demonic just because a lot of the time, like a lot of people have an experience with the paranormal, UFOs and aliens and Bigfoot. But if you go back to the ancient Native Americans, they talk about skinwalkers. And to me, that's not like some person that wore people's skin that was able to transform into something else. To me, that's their definition of a demon, because like it's walking in your skin. Basically, it's a demon. It's
Right.
inside of you. And they say that demons are able to manifest as a creature. They can be invisible. They can be inside you. And whenever a person's having demonic activity, the first stage is you'll start hearing things and things will start moving around the house. Then like the second stage is you start experiencing like depression, anxiety. And then like the third stage is like oppression, and then so on until
Right.
the whatever it is fully takes control of you, which is the definition of a skinwalker. You're basically its meat bag.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that we've heard several different times. We've had some guests, obviously notably from like the Warren Foundation and stuff like that, where they've talked about kind of some of those same symptomatic things when you're getting possession or something like that before exorcism. So yeah, it's an interesting point. Thinking the possibility of these creatures of potentially being demonic or being something sort of like a skin bag, I guess, a meat bag
Yeah.
for something like that.
I just find it interesting that people have, these encounters with them when they're not actively looking for them.
Yeah.
But then when they go to hunt for Bigfoot, they can never find him. That's what is always interesting to me. And that's what makes me think they can hop in between
Right.
to get away.
That or they're just very knowledgeable of the
That too.
area.
You just think like the size of them,
Yeah.
how that would be possible.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think? What's your take on that? Like, who goes out hunting for Sasquatch? I mean, obviously,
You
other
do.
than yourself, but like, I mean, is there kind of like, I mean, a lot of people that do paranormal, they usually have had an incident or something like that, kind of like what you did with your incident and the things you've experienced. But like, what is the main? I guess what is it that people look like? Who goes hunts these things?
No, there's all kinds of researchers in Missouri, and I think a lot of people don't hear about them because they try to stay private due to their occupation and families. But I know a lot of people that go out there looking for them, and we do find evidence every now and then. Me and a buddy used like military tactics one day, and kept the wind in our favor. We snuck in there. We were using thermal. We went in at nighttime at a Bigfoot hotspot area, and we did experience like wood knocks, and they were like smashing rocks and breaking limbs. But I mean, they were too far away to capture on the thermal. They just look like blobs. But I don't know. It's hard to say if it's demonic. The only reason I say that is because I was having paranormal activity in the house whenever this stuff kept taking place. And then I have had experiences where like I'd seen orbs in the same areas that I was having Bigfoot activity. And it's happened several times where we could hear this bipedal being or whatever walking in the woods, not even 40, 50 yards into the woods during the winter time when there's no leaves and there's nothing, you can't see anything, but you can hear it.
Yeah.
And it's loud.
That's wild.
So, I mean, when people say they cloak, they're invisible, it kind of sounds stupid and way out there and not possible, but.
Well,
No, it sounds possible to me. After all the stuff that we've heard, it would make sense,
yeah,
actually.
and I know this is kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, but even like a movie like The Predator, they got that idea from that very possibility of something being able to cloak itself or keep itself from being seen. I mean, I guess if you need to play into that reality, let's say it is an interdimensional creature. It obviously has some technology that we're not messing with. Whether we think it's primitive, and I'm sure that everybody thinks, okay, Bigfoot, primitive, they can only do, X, Y, Z because they have a primitive mind. But if it's a creature that can go interdimensional, then you got to think it's got to have capability to do a lot technically. So why couldn't it have some sort of cloaking device or cloaking capability? I mean, we always arbitrarily think of them as being very rudimentary, hunt, kill type mentality, but we have no idea they could have that capability.
I mean, anything is possible at this point.
Man, that's crazy to think that, though. Really like having the Predator out there trying to...
Well, they certainly know more about us than we know about them.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
It seems that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know that we talk about mainly the wooded areas. Is there other places where you think, of course, in Japan, they've come across it and a few other places that are very popular and known, but is it just wooded areas or where would you normally find them?
Yeah, it seems to be wooded areas. I mean, I've heard reports where people like say they've seen them in the city, but I'm kind of skeptical of that. But I mean, anything's possible, like you guys said.
Right.
Yeah.
But all the reports, if you look at like maps that people have created, they're like concentrated in certain areas. Like Missouri has like several areas where they've been seen. And it's not just around here. It's down South Missouri, Southeast Missouri, Southwest Missouri, and basically where there's woods. But I mean, that's a lot of Missouri.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
that's true.
For sure. Yeah, we're in Southwest Missouri, and you don't even have to go very far out of our driveway to run into a wooded area. So, especially if you start going, I guess basically east of Branson. I mean, you get into some
Oh, yeah.
crazy heavy
Well,
woods.
it's the Ozark Mountains come
Right.
in, and it's very hilly, and there's lots of places to
Yeah.
hide.
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
want to hide somewhere, that's the place to do it. Because,
Absolutely.
but no, that makes perfect sense. And for them to be, I guess, kind of concentrated in the same area would make sense too. And that's probably why they're so good at being evasive. Because if they have been there longer than we have, I mean, we're not going to see them. We're not catching them.
No. Well, no. That's why I'm saying they know more about what we're doing than we know about them, so they can.
I mean, just the thought of that is kind of. I mean, honestly, it's really scary because everybody says, well, so much of the world is populated. Granted, I get it. But yeah, come out to Missouri and go to the woods and tell me that again, because there aren't a whole lot of population out there. So,
No.
and the fact that it's, I don't know, right down the driveway, that's a little scary too. So, man, my hat's off to you for going out there and doing that, because that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some of the signs that you look for when you go out in the woods to, maybe prove that you think he's, Sasquatch has been out there? Like, what do you actually look for?
Signs that I'm looking for Sasquatch is X structures, arches, and not just like a tree that fell on top of another tree that makes an X. We're talking about symmetrical ones, multiple ones in an area with the arches and different geometrical patterns. And you'll look for tree breaks, and it's not just like one tree break, and you go to another set of woods and you find another one or some just bent over tree. We're talking about a large amount of those geometrical patterns in one concentrated area, maybe about 1 to 5 acres. And when you find that spot, you're going to see a ton of structures that look like they were intentional, like somebody made them. And sometimes they're extremely large, but that's about what I look for.
Why do you think they're doing that? Like, is it building shelters, or what's the reason for that?
I think they have a complex language and they're communicating with one another or possibly warning people to stay out of that area.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen that on your
Yeah,
show.
we've seen it on your channel looking for that, but
yeah, especially the X pattern. I find that interesting. I wonder what. I mean, it's very rudimentary in thought, but yeah, that could be some kind of code. Hey,
yeah.
don't come here or stay away. Yeah, I would actually kind of lean to the fact to be more language between them, because obviously they've kept from us. I don't think they're too concerned about us. So maybe that is a way of communicating. Hey, I mean, I hate it to sound like this, but X marks a spot. I ran into one of these crazy people hunting us here. Get away from here. That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's funny you mention that, because again, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about maybe Bigfoot or Sasquatch that they couldn't communicate. And obviously, if there's more than one, they got to communicate somehow, So that makes perfect sense that you go to these things and there's some structure and there's some kind of language, because even humanity, not to go deep into the woods on this one, we always had some sort of rudimentary communication. So why wouldn't they?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So my next encounter takes place, I don't know, probably whenever I'd say 27 years old. I was working at a meat processing plant, and after work that day, I had gotten directions from the owner because he was showing me where some new public land was, and I was trying to get into bow hunting. So I followed his directions and went out to a place kind of behind Merrimack Springs. And whenever I got there, I parked my Mustang, opened up the door, walked out to the big cliff, the big bluff, and you can see the Merrimack River and just a ton of woods. So I was looking kind of like where I was going to go down that cliff to cross the river to set up my hunting stand the next morning, because this was 2018. It was September 14th, and it was the day before bow season. So I walked back to my car, and whenever I was walking back to my car, I saw this black figure scurry on all fours, and it got up behind a tree and slowly hid. It was black and hairy, and I thought it was a black bear because it was that big. And my mind was trying to rationalize it. I was like, oh, that's probably a group of turkeys, maybe some hogs. And I just wasn't sure what it was. But the strange part was whenever it got up behind the tree, it was standing up and it slowly hid behind the tree like that. So I was thinking, man,
Mm,
that's an intelligent black bear to know
Yeah.
to hide behind the tree like that. And
right.
that's all I saw basically. I stared at that tree for a few minutes and then I never saw it again. So I was like, okay, that's pretty weird. I went back to my car, went home, got all my hunting stuff together, went back out there the next morning, and I was sitting there in the dark thinking about where I was going to set up my stand. And I just got kind of nervous. I was like, man, if there's a black bear out there, I don't really want to be here. And the
Yeah,
sun
no
started to
kidding.
come up, and I just got a really bad feeling. So I never went in there and hunted that morning.
Hmm. Well, I'm glad you listened to that because our intuition usually tells us.
That's pretty good instincts because you
Uh
can,
huh.
I mean, even in Arizona, we had bears. I mean, California, we had bears. And whenever you went out, I mean, I've seen bears out in the wild and they're not smart enough to hide behind any kind of tree. In fact, no,
No.
they'll probably brush up against it. But man, that's crazy. I would imagine when you become really sensitive to this, is it hard? And I probably being a fan of your show and being a fan of your channel, I already know the answer to this, but I kind of want you to talk about it. Is it hard to go out in the woods and enjoy yourself sometimes because you're like, holy crap, this is a sign, or this could potentially be a sign? I mean, obviously, you've got to kind of always be somewhat alert in the woods anyway, but having the knowledge and the experience that you've had, I mean, does that kind of make it a little bit difficult to go out on just a normal hike?
It does because after I had my encounters, it just kind of took over my mind, and that's what I think about a lot. And I don't know, I'm just not as interested in deer hunting or turkey hunting anymore. And whenever I'm out there, that's basically what I'm thinking of: is when am I going to see another one of these things? When am I going to hear them? And I don't know, it just took out some of the enjoyment in my life, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that.
That's going to happen for us too. I
Oh,
mean,
I know. It already has.
yeah. I mean,
It
obviously,
already has.
we kind of have had a lot of, ghost type paranormal
Paranormal
experiences.
experiences. Yeah.
And,
But
going into a place, I don't know. I hate it because it's hard sometimes to enjoy certain places because I'm like, I get that sense of, yeah, something doesn't click right here. There's something going on.
well,
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just kind of known once you're open to something, you just keep having experiences, whether that be, the ghost or the cryptid or whatever. It's like it's attracted to you because it knows that you can see it or you're aware of it. And I think that's part of it. And it
Right.
sounds like that's happening with you as well. You just keep having these experiences because they know you're open to it. I don't know.
Well, I agree with that.
So I
Yeah.
feel that's the way it is for us
Yeah.
now.
I definitely think there comes a point because, I mean, I've said it on our show plenty of times, and I'm sure, Miguel, you'd agree. I don't think that there's anything special between the three of us. I think all of
No.
us have, the capability of being like this. Just I think most people either A, want to ignore it, or they just don't want to be a part of it, or just something happens where they don't follow it down.
Yeah.
But I
Or
think
talk themselves out
or
of it.
talk themselves out of it.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people have that like inherent ability to, well, I mean, honestly, it's what kept us alive before we had structures and things like that do it for us. But no, it's just wild. And I would imagine traveling and going through the desert, that's me, going through the woods would be kind of difficult for you because you would constantly have that. But
Yeah.
man, that's kind of wild. But kind of on that, since you do have obviously a lot more experiences than we do, but what are some of the, I guess, everybody kind of comes to the table with Bigfoot conceptions and different things. And, you look at movies and all this other stuff. And I think probably there's a lot of misconceptions out there, but what do you feel are the most common misconceptions about Sasquatch, Bigfoot, and these creatures?
Mm, oh, that's a difficult question just because I feel like nobody's wrong. Even people that think it's some type of unknown primate to people that think it's something otherworldly to demonic. And I don't know. One misconception that people have is that you're stupid for going out there and wood knocking or calling to these things, and that doesn't work. And I disagree. It does work. Not every time, but if you're at the right place, right time, right area, it can work.
Yeah, that makes sense. And wood knocking, that's not something necessarily just related to Bigfoot. I mean, there's some hunters that would knock for like deer and things like that too. So, I mean, wood knocking is a known tool for not just Bigfoot. So it makes sense that, creatures are going to respond to that.
Well, it's communication, like dialing the phone is the way
Yeah.
I see it. Like
For
pick up.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even deer will knock on wood with their horns and stuff.
Antlers.
Antlers. Thank you. I was struggling there for a minute, but they'll knock. See, told you I was a city kid for a long time, but they rub their horns on things to make. You know what I meant. Anyway, so it makes sense, and I agree with you. I think the minute you silo thinking that it only has to be one thing is when you kind of mess up, because you're right. I think that, first of all, my personal feeling is if there's one, there's many. And if there's many, there's got to be different forms of them. I would imagine that one particular, I don't know, for lack of better words, Bigfoot creature is maybe potentially different than like the ones in Japan or the ones in, I mean, maybe even in the US, because, like you said, Washington State kind of is one of the bigger ones too. So what's to say that the Bigfoot and the Sasquatch that we have here in Missouri are at all the same species that are in in Washington? I mean, they can vary, and each one of them is going to have a different way of doing things. One could be a quote unquote nice guy. The other guy could be a total jerk. I mean, you never know. It happens with us, so why couldn't it happen with them?
Well, I mean, there's reports of different, color, like the fur. So what are the reports in Missouri, like the color of the fur that they typically see?
The most typical is the jet black, like a coal black color. But I mean, they come in many different variations, and it's kind of like kittens or possums, like a litter of them. Some are black, some are white, some are a mix of both, some are brown, some have every single color. That's kind of how the Sasquatch are, but the most typical color is the jet black.
I think that's the first time I've heard it about it being black.
Really?
Usually hear about like the red or the
Yeah,
brown,
brown.
reddish brown
Yeah.
color.
I guess
That
black
is
and brown
interesting.
would be the most common, but there are white ones, there are gray ones, there's black and white ones, and
Which would that would make sense, because if you're a creature that has to be somewhat protected by your surroundings, you would want to emulate its surroundings.
Yeah.
I would imagine like a black furry one would probably get around better at night. So maybe they're more nocturnal. Maybe part of what they have as far as outer protection, that's kind of how their hunting pattern goes, or whatever have you.
I mean, yeah, it would make sense.
I mean, I know this is stupid, but even like the abominable snowman, was white.
The Yeti.
The Yeti.
Yeah.
I know. I just thought
Because
I'd
they're
throw it
in the
there.
snow.
Yeah. Right.
Well, I mean, that's how, like, at least in the animal kingdom,
right.
that's how they protect themselves with camouflage.
Or they're just really intelligent and know how to do it with whatever, if they got a
I mean,
device
I don't
that'll
know.
cloak them.
Yeah, we don't know that part.
it's hard to say. I mean, there's documentaries of like tigers, they're like an orange, white, and black color, and whenever they get into the grass, it almost looks like they're cloaking. Like when they stop, they disappear. So,
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And there's been a lot of like, and I don't know how, I'm sure you watch it a lot, but there's been some like recent study or recent videos where you're just like, I think there was one where someone was traveling on a train and they spotted it on a hillside.
Oh, yeah, that was recent.
Yeah, that
Within
was
the last
really
year, I
recent.
think. But I can't remember where it was.
And first of all, the speed that this thing was moving at was just crazy. How would you, I mean, first of all, you never catch it on foot. You'd have to be like in a train or something vehicle moving you at that speed.
Yeah.
But I think even that one kind of disappeared at one point. Do you remember that one, Miguel?
no, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's actually
It's
pretty
pretty
recent.
good. It's like just a rocky hillside.
Yeah.
And so it stands out pretty well. And I think it was like a dark brown or black.
Mm-hmm.
And they filmed it from the train window.
Yep.
But it was very short, like little clip.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
If it's real. I mean, that's the hard thing. You
Right.
don't know if
You
any of
never
these things
know.
are real with the way technology is now. I mean, they can create anything.
Do you think that, obviously there's a classic film, and that was in Washington, where there was a bipedal animal walking from one point to another. I wonder with some of your knowledge and some of your experience, I wonder if they're kind of both ways. Like, could they also move on fours and be able to be bipedal at the same time? I would think that, especially like with the speed that they can go at, they would probably be able to do something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they'll walk like gorillas, like on their hands on all fours, and then they can stand up too, and it's not awkward like a gorilla. They walk more like a man.
Okay.
Right.
Well, even that one encounter you were talking about, didn't you say it would like kind of scurried across on all fours and then stood up behind the tree, right? So,
Yeah.
Yeah, that, that really makes me wonder about, you get into, and I don't want to get into like evolution or anything like that, because I don't really want to tackle something like that. But you think about its ability to be kind of quick, nimble, be able to get away and hide itself, to be able to go from, because that's something that we can't do. We can't go from bipedal to being on all fours. You got to think, if you can make that if you have that ability, I mean, you can hide in a lot of frickin' places.
that's true.
For us, like, we couldn't just go from standing and walking the way we are and running to getting off on all fours, although Hollywood would tell you otherwise. But
Children can.
yeah,
but
children
adults,
can. That's
adults
true.
Can't.
But, if we could do that with a lot of ability and fluidity, we could probably hide in a lot of different places too. But I guess the other thing I'm kind of curious about is, do you think that Bigfoot's always got to be this ginormous creature? Because I've always wondered about that, and I know Nicole brought that up. We talk about their ability to hide. There's got to be some of them that are just not necessarily that big. They may be very powerful, but I would imagine, have you noticed that they range in size?
Yeah. Yeah, they come in different sizes. Some are ginormous, 10 plus feet tall, and then others are, I don't know, I think the average is like 7, 8 feet tall. But you also have juveniles, little ones that are only like 4 feet tall, but still very robust.
So there's indication that they're families then. It's not just the typical one that you see.
Right, yeah, there's not just one. There's clans of them, family groups, and they work together for the better of the clan.
I mean, that makes perfect sense.
Well, yeah, I mean, it does.
I
just think it would be so hard to hide with that. I mean, I think about us as humans, a family with kids. You can't hide kids. They're never quiet. Like, you can't, you know what I mean?
Right.
It would be difficult to do that, I would feel.
Yeah, I would imagine too, with having family, that's going to, first of all, that just adds a whole new layer on things.
It does.
Because, primate or not, or anything, in the animal kingdom, if you have a family, there's going to be a need to protect. There's going to need to be a need to forage. There's going to be a need, all these different things for the dynamics of being able to have a family. So that, to me, not only speaks to its capabilities, but its ability to think and to do things. I would think that, again, to me, I think a common misconception, at least in my mind, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the mean, but that they are very rudimentary and they're just hunter killers. Well, if you add the dynamic of family, that changes quite a bit.
Yeah.
Now their thought is not just hunter-gatherer, it is now family and protection of clans. So it would make perfect sense, getting back to that communication, that, if a clan is going through, hey, this is a place where we've ran into things, and you don't have to go too back into history. I'm part Native American, and my ancestors moved in that nomadic way. And not just that, even Scottish people on my other side, you leave something behind to tell a story or to say, hey, there's danger here. So to me, it almost sounds like, all these misconceptions about you know, and I don't know if that's true necessarily. I'm just throwing that out there. I think a lot of people would think that they're not that intelligent, but
I think they are.
I think they're
very
highly intelligent.
Yes, I think so.
Right. I mean,
well, I think it all goes back to the whole, primate thing. Like they associate them with a primate, but primates are intelligent as well. But if they think of them in that way, they think that they can't do any of this stuff. But I don't feel that's the case.
Right. So what's your thought, Miguel? I mean, we've talked about it now for almost an hour. And I know that you've got loads of content. We're going to have you talk about that here in a second, but what do you think's happening out there? I mean, like, what's your, we live in a very robust wildlife, rich area. And again, we've talked about not a lot of people have that capability. What's your thought on what's really going on out there? We talked about some of the paranormal. We talked about, the different ghost experiences or what could have happened to you in your home. What's kind of your take on this? Because you not only handle or have been around Sasquatch and Bigfoot, but knowing you, we know that you also have the paranormal thought. So kind of what do you think?
I think it's both. And I think they are physical creatures that are living out there with supernatural capabilities. And that was my theory whenever I had these encounters and experiences. And later on, I learned that the Native Americans said the same thing, that they're both.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So where do they shelter? Like, would they live in cave? Because we do have caves in Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
I would hate to think they're just out there in the woods. I mean, do they build structures to stay underneath, or has anybody found anything like that of where they've actually sheltered?
People have claimed to find like dens and like holes in the ground, but I don't think so. I think they just live out there. If there's a tornado or if it's really cold, I think they're just out there and they're able to withstand the elements.
Okay.
Man, that's a good point, because obviously,
because that's what I always think about, like now at least walking through the woods is like, where are they? Because even bears and stuff, like in the winter, they go into caves.
yeah.
Like I would, especially like I've got the mothering, nurturing thing. Like if you've got children, you want to keep them safe and warm. But they do have the long, thick hair, so maybe that's enough.
Yeah, but it's because you're right. We live in Tornado Alley.
Yes, we do.
I mean, you got the big old, finger of God coming down every so often. What do they do for that?
Well, but we also have hills in the woods
true.
and stuff, so I guess they could,
Well, hopefully you're not dumb enough to get under an underpass. God. Anyway.
like they tell us to do.
Yeah, get under an underpass.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Miguel, thank you so much for being on the show.
We appreciate it.
Totally happy to have you, and hopefully someday we can have you back. But obviously, we know where to find you, but where can our audience find you, and how do they get in touch with you?
You can check out my YouTube channel called Sasquatch Theory, and people can contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com and email me there, and I'll get in touch with you.
Awesome.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we're again. Thanks, Miguel. We had a blast.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to have you around. Obviously, we have some friends in common, so it's good to have you on, and we look forward to reaching out to you again and talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely, and hopefully we can meet up in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's plan on that.
That'd be great.
That sounds good.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, we'll let you. Yeah, sounds good. We'll let you go, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, you guys take care, and thank you for having me on the show.
Our honor.
Absolutely.
Well, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, and also, if you heard beeps and stuff like that, we were in the middle of a storm while we were recording, so we kept getting alerts. So if you hear dings and stuff, hey, sorry about that. It's just the fun of having a show right in the middle of a storm. So
yes.
Anyway, but man, he was great to have on.
Yeah, he was.
He's
very knowledgeable.
Yeah, and what's funny is that, some of the stuff that he brought up, you just don't arbitrarily think about,
No. And it's some stuff I had never heard before.
Yeah, I hadn't either. Especially the cloaking. I didn't think. I mean, again, like we talked about, it makes sense.
I mean, it does make sense.
But yeah, I don't know.
I just feel like it's one of those things we're never really going to know.
No, and maybe that's okay. But
that's what's fun about the search.
Oh, for sure. And I appropriately wore the right shirt for it today.
Yes, you did.
But no, honestly, again, thank you so much, Sasquatch Theory, Miguel, for being on. Hopefully, I think that won't be the last time you'll see him.
No, we have plans.
We have plans, but yeah, we had a great time, and hopefully this will just be the first of many conversations about this and other things with Miguel. And
yeah.
But
if you've seen, like, had an experience or heard or seen Bigfoot, Sasquatch, you should definitely reach out to him through his email. I'm sure he'd love to talk to you about it. Or you can reach out to us at info@gxparanormal.com and tell us about it. Or if we can help you link up with him, we can do that as well.
Yep. And always don't forget, we do have a Facebook
and an Instagram account.
And an Instagram account.
So reach out, like, follow, leave a comment.
Do all the things.
Yes.
Get on YouTube, like, subscribe. And if you're watching this, you've made it to the end, hey, tell the next person to watch it till the end. But other than that, guys, thanks again for stopping by, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
I'll see you next week.
Bye.